Right, okay. I'm recording this just to give you an example of how you might conduct your oral task next Saturday. I've chosen as an example an extract from Act 1, Scene 2 of Henry V. It's the scene about the tennis balls. Okay. So a little bit of context for this particular scene. This scene comes from Act 1, Scene 2, very near the beginning of Shakespeare's Henry V. Now, the scene concerns a present, a treasure that the young king, Henry, has received from the French crown prince, the Dauphin. And it's a mocking treasure. It's a gift of tennis balls. And Henry has to decide how he's going to respond. In the immediate context of this gift, Henry is meeting with his nobles and has had a conversation with the two most powerful churchmen in England at the time, the Archbishops of Ely and of Cambridge. Now, both of these men are more like politicians rather than churchmen, and they're conspiring to persuade the young man, who they think they can influence quite strongly, to go and retrieve and re-win the English possessions in France. It was quite a complex situation, but at the time, essentially many English, including the king, believed historically, as a result of victories their forefathers had won, that a large proportion of what we now know as modern France was in fact part of the English kingdom. But of course many of the French didn't see it the same way, and so it would have to be fought for. But in those days, of course, a king had the responsibility of not just his own kingdom, but everybody who lived within it. He was seen as divinely appointed by God, the divine right of kings. And Henry had a slightly difficult situation as well, because all the men sitting around the table have known him as a playboy prince, Prince Harry, a man who has behaved inappropriately and poorly, a drinker, a person who has a very bad reputation. And of course many of them are older than him and remember his father, who himself was seen as a usurper, a man who had stolen the crown from the previous king, Richard II, and made himself Henry IV. So in the context of the play, this is a crucial scene, because in this scene, Henry defines himself publicly, not just in front of the churchmen, not just in front of his nobles, but also in front of the Dauphin, because of course the messenger is the eyes and the mouth of the Dauphin himself, and the messenger is very much surprised. He came in a very cocksure, confident and arrogant fashion, delivering his message with a swagger. He says that the Dauphin has informed the king that some of the claims he has in France are the silly, overblown claims of a young man who doesn't really understand affairs of state and is a little bit silly and should probably go back to what he's best at, which is, playing games. And so when Henry says to his uncle Exeter, the most powerful of his inner circle and a very determined and strong-willed man, he says, "What treasure is it, uncle?" Exeter says, opening the tun, meaning the box, "Tennis balls, my liege." And at that point, Shakespeare, as we begin the scene, leaves us with a heavy silence, what we call a pregnant pause. And we just know that on the stage at that time, Henry would be framed as an individual faced by all the most powerful men in his kingdom. And they want answers. They want to know if they are going to commit themselves to a huge endeavour with the lives of thousands of people who they probably know personally on their hands. They want to make sure that this is a king who they can trust, that this is a worthy king, somebody who is worthy of being called a medieval king. And so this is Henry's moment, and he has to deliver a speech. Now, of course, in Shakespeare's play, at frequent times, Henry has to deliver speeches because that was the most dramatic way of revealing what kind of character this man was. And he begins slowly, but the speech becomes an extended metaphor. It gains pace, it gains strength, and it starts picking up as he starts feeling more confident. "We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His present and your pains we thank you for. This is courtesy, this is the law of chivalry. The messenger is not somebody who can be hurt. You wouldn't show him discourtesy or disrespect. It would be expected that you would treat him with, in fact, a polite respect for his position and who he represents, the King of France." But there's an anger in Henry burning here, and you can sense it in Shakespeare gives us the idea that the fire has been lit, because the pace of it starts to pick up, and he starts to develop the metaphor of the tennis balls, which everybody, of course, would know, because tennis was a very popular game again amongst the nobles in England at the time. When we have matched our rackets to these balls, we will in France, by God's grace, play a set, shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Now, he's not joking anymore, and the messenger is slightly taken aback. He uses the metaphor of the tennis balls in the game to introduce a new violence and a new action to what was previously quite a passive scene. The joke is turned back upon the Dauphin, and it's he who is made to excuse me, look small because of the jest or the mock of the balls. The balls are made to look little because Henry says we will match our rackets to these balls. Now, of course, the rackets are the active strikers of tennis balls, and so the Dauphin's jest is being hit back at him hard. It's rebounding him hard, like the volley of a tennis ball. The hazard is a reference to holes in the wall of a real tennis court. The game was played with walls at the sides as well, and you would win the game if you could strike the ball into one of the hazards. So also this kind of this motif of victory, the sense that the game will be played, but the game will quite clearly be won by the English. Tell him. Now he starts to adopt the imperative case here, the command which is worthy of a king. He hath made a match with such a wrangler that all the courts of France will be disturbed with chases. A wrangler is an opponent, but also one who never gives up. The diction is important here, and also the double meaning of some of his words. All the courts of France is, of course, tennis courts, but he means the royal court as well. And chases is also, as well as chasing around a tennis court, it refers to hunting. It's a hunting reference, and this is a common motif in Henry V. The idea of the king as a hunter seeking a prey. He often refers to his soldiers as dogs of war or greyhounds straining upon the leash. Later at Harfleur and at Agincourt too. So we shouldn't forget the idea of the hunt as something which Henry is trying to inspire in his men. And of course, looking around the table, the nobles will start to be warmed by the king's newfound confidence. But then slightly he takes it down slightly, and we understand him well, how he comes over us with our wilder days, not measuring what use we made of them. He shows something which is slightly unusual in a medieval king, but by the time that Shakespeare was writing, it was something that would possibly be valued. A king who can point the finger at himself and say, I haven't always been a good person. It makes Henry more human. It makes him more plausible. He says, I know why the Dauphin is joking with me, because I wasn't always the man that you see before me now. I know that sometimes when I was the prince, I wasn't a worthy monarch, but now I am. And if he's going to mess with me, he needs to know who he's messing with. We never valued this poor seat of England, and therefore living hence did give ourselves to barbarous licence, as 'tis ever common that men are merriest when they are from home. So he says, yes, true, I was. I wasn't a great prince, and like many men, I misbehaved. But times are changing. But tell the Dauphin. He starts it off with a conjunction. But before you get carried away and start thinking I still am that man, you tell the Dauphin, once again the imperative, that I will keep my state, be like a king, and show my sail of greatness when I do rouse me in my throne of France. So he doesn't go too far into humility, and then he picks himself up, and we're given this very visual image when he talks about my sail of greatness. Now, of course, the English army would, of course, have to sail to France, and ships in those days were sailing ships with great billowing sails, and we're given a very vivid image of a man who represents the state sailing the ship of state towards France. And he says, when I do rouse me in my throne of France, when I do get up and stand up for what is mine in my throne of France, the personal pronoun is all about, this is not yours. Now the Dauphin, of course, would regard all of France as his own, but Henry is